Hello and welcome to a very special How I Print Things. Now today I want to go over some of the troubleshooting tips that you can use to get your first layer of print working perfectly. It really is the foundation for everything that's going to come out on top of it, so it needs to be spot on. It doesn't need to be perfect, luckily, but the closer to perfect you can get it, the better. And with these machines, like I have an Ender 3 here, sometimes you can get a few odd little defects which will make that troubleshooting a bit more challenging than it needs to be. But hey, luckily, I've experienced some of those pitfalls already, so let's get into it, and I'll talk you through a couple of the issues that you can have. So this here, this is the build plate that comes standard with the Ender 3, and as you'll see, it's a little bit flexible. Alright, now I opted to go for a glass bed eventually. I started out with this little doofer, but then I picked up a glass bed, and it took me a little bit of work to figure out why that was going to be the better option. I'll show you why. Now there are a lot of videos and tips and what have you online about how to level your bed, so I'm going to skip that part. But bed leveling is an absolutely crucial step to everything. Alright, with an incorrectly leveled bed, nothing's going to go right. So why is the build surface so important, and why would I choose the glass over this? The stock build plate is not too bad as far as adhesion goes, so that wasn't really the problem I was having. But check this out. Now ordinarily, your build plate sits on top of your hot plate, and life is good. You have some clips to attach it and make sure it doesn't slide around, but that's as it should be, that's where it sits. Here's the problem I was having. Uh-oh. The problem is my heat plate was actually very slightly warped. So in using a glass plate, which of course doesn't bend, I'm able to use the clips to get a much more accurate surface. Because the clips are strong enough that this will actually hold, there we go, will hold all of my four corners in place and make sure that the heat plate is correctly stuck against the underside of the build plate. That's one thing to be on the lookout for with some of these cheaper machines, especially ones that are going to come as kits. Now one thing to bear in mind, if you do decide to add a glass bed, you can use any glass sheet, whether it be a mirror or just a sheet of glass from your local hardware store, as long as it fits the dimensions of your printer. If you do pick one up though, you're going to need to get your little Z-axis stopper here. You might hear that clicking. You need to raise that up by roughly the length of, the thickness of the plate there. As I've mentioned before, this print head is pretty dumb. It doesn't know where it is. So if you don't raise the Z stopper, then this thing is going to come down, happily hit, the point where this is actually going to stop it, and without hitting the Z stop, it's going to crash straight through and, it can cause issues. Might scratch your glass bed a little bit. Now one of the other issues that might crop up with your machine is these little adjuster springs here. The ones that I got were rubbish, to be perfectly frank. They do not work very well at all, which has meant that I've had to do a little bit of adjusting. Now ordinarily, these little knobs here, if I tighten them, so I screw them further onto the screw, what happens is it pulls down the screw so the build plate lowers, and you can adjust it that way. Under normal circumstances, with a better spring, if I loosen the pressure from the wheel, the spring should push the build plate back up, giving you the ability to raise and lower as necessary. These are nonsense. So I've had to jury rig a little bit of extra pressure in there. So all I've done is gotten some M4 nuts. These are available at your local hardware store. They cost a matter of cents. And I've just added one up at the top there. If that will focus. There we go, finally. I've added one at the top there and one just underneath, which I do have to crank with a wrench because these wheels as well, the ones that I got for a couple of the things, are awful. So you do get what you pay for with these Ender 3s, but troubleshooting can be part of the fun if you're prepared for that. But that's one extra little tip. If you've got one side that's not sitting correctly, add a bit more pressure to the underside of the spring with an M4 nut. Now a heated bed plate is really good for helping those first layer adhesions. By keeping the plastic warm, it gives it a little bit more time to settle, And especially with materials like ABS, for example, you're going to find that a heated bed plate is almost a must. Now, one of the problems I was getting was that in the bottom right-hand corner here, my prints were curling up. They were curling strangely at the corners. And it was always this same corner for some reason. Now, the good thing with a machine that is correctly calibrated is that it will always have the same problem, which means you can diagnose them a lot more easily. Now, the problem I was having, I went everywhere. Google, Reddit, specialty forums and the like, where people were having issues with prints peeling off the bed early. And the only possible problem it could be was incorrect cooling. I had one part of the print that was cooling too quickly, and it was resulting in this curl up at the corner, which was really deforming some of these big prints, and it really bothered me. What could I do to fix it? Now, one suggestion was that I had to make sure that this corner was actually correctly heated by the bed. Now, I don't have any fancy temperature sensing equipment, so I had to really eyeball it. Where it says, do not touch the heated bed, yeah, guys, don't. Don't touch the bed, even if you want to know how hot it is. Don't be like me. But that is how I solved the problem. That's how I tested whether or not it was that hot. And let me tell you, ow, it was pretty hot in all the right places. So the only possible source of this issue of incorrect cooling had to be from a breeze. What could it be though? Because I had the window closed, the door closed. This machine is nowhere near the door, so even if I open it to come in and check how a print is going, there's no reason that it should be doing that. It bothered me for a good couple of days, and I was really worried that something was wrong with the machine that I couldn't account for. But then it hit me, and I mean it literally hit me, because on the side here, there we go, is the power source, and the power source has a fan that blows outwards, which ordinarily is not a problem, unless you're like me and you're a goon, and you keep the machine up close to a wall. Now, this power source doesn't ordinarily operate hot enough to generate a really hot exhaust, so it's blowing relatively cool air out and away from the machine like it should do, which is then hitting the wall, and guess where that corner sits? So there was my problem. Now, I bring this up because it's an easy solution, but the problem-solving steps in the diagnosis are a little bit esoteric. So there you have it, guys. Just a couple of really quick tips on how you can muck around with some of these cheap machines. I know it's not particularly in-depth, but remember, I'm just getting started with this too, and honestly, the mistakes that I'm making are probably of great use to you guys already. I do thoroughly recommend the Ender 3 though. I've actually gotten some really great results out of it, and that's even with all my little jury rigs. I have got some replacement springs on the way, so hopefully I'll be able to get rid of my nuts and fix the machine up the way it should be. If you don't want to have to worry about spending any extra money on it though, hey, easy solutions. So next time something goes horrendously wrong, I'll be able to document and tell you guys how to fix it. So if this was interesting, feel free, drop a comment in the old box below. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Hey, you enjoy the rest of your day.